I think in one of the earlier shows I mentioned, we don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents.
Well, I'm trying to teach people a form of art that anybody can do. This is art for anyone who's ever wanted to put a dream on canvas. It's not traditional art, it's not fine art, and I don't try to tell anybody to do it.
Well, it's a very delicate operation. Diana has worked with me for a long time. Diana is the bird lady here in Muncie who loaned me this little rascal. And this is how hard it is to get a little squirrel to eat.
Art students, speaking of cute, got together to build some happy little clouds and happy little trees.
Yeah, it was sky blue shirts, big auburn wigs everywhere as they all dressed up to look like Bob Ross.
Bob Ross was the beloved, soothing voice many tuned in to watch on The Joy of Painting, a PBS hit that showed people how to whip up stunning landscapes and vibrant skies in just about half an hour. His warm, hypnotic voice and easygoing nature not only made art seem accessible, but also turned painting into a relaxing, almost meditative process. Even after his passing, Bob's influence didn't fade, it flourished. Now, across the nation, instructors who follow his painting techniques continue to spread his artistic legacy. He gathered a huge following with fans who couldn't get enough of his eternal optimism, his chill vibe, and his mesmerizing way of speaking. Even years later, people still watch reruns of his show, basking in his calm presence and the peaceful art sessions he guided so gently.
Thin coat of liquid white. The liquid white is designed just to make the canvas wet and to make it slick. It allows us to actually blend color right here on the canvas. It makes your whole painting life a lot easier. So let's get started.
Bob Ross's celebrity status stemmed not just from his art, which indeed broke new ground by making painting seem simple and enjoyable, but from his personality. He radiated positivity and had this unique way of empowering his viewers, encouraging them to believe in their own creative talents. However, the end of Bob Ross's life contrasted sharply with the tranquility he painted into existence. He passed away on the 4th of July in 1995 after a quick and grueling fight with cancer. According to those close to him, Bob had a premonition that he wouldn't live a long life. A long-time smoker, his health had been compromised before. He had already fought off 2 heart attacks and an earlier bout of cancer by the time he reached his 40s. But it was his second encounter with cancer, this time with a severe and fast-acting type known as lymphoma that he couldn't overcome. In 1994, as Bob Ross was gearing up to film what would become the final episode of the 31st season of The Joy of Painting, those who watched closely could see that the once robust and lively painter seemed noticeably weaker during his last appearance on the show. Unfortunately, this was just the beginning of a rapid decline in his health. After stepping away from the television cameras, Bob faced a series of personal losses that were as striking as they were sad. One of the most visible changes was the loss of his iconic perm, which fell out due to his treatments. Additionally, his voice, known for its calming and gentle tone, grew hoarse and weak. These health issues forced him to leave the familiar surroundings of his studio in Muncie, Indiana, and return to his home in Orlando, Florida. Back at home during his final months, Bob was so unwell that he couldn't even muster the energy to paint, something that had been a source of joy and comfort throughout his life. During this tough time, Bob was also caught up in distressing legal and personal disputes concerning his will and the control of his estate. There were moments of intense stress, where he was overheard yelling into the telephone from his deathbed, battling over the rights to his name and his work. Despite his failing health, Bob Ross was at the center of a vast painting empire. He had developed a whole line of art supplies branded with his likeness, including palettes, brushes, and easels, as well as various instructional booklets. He even offered personal painting lessons at a premium rate of $375 per hour. By 1995, his business ventures had accumulated a value estimated at over $15 million. The drama intensified just days before the conclusion of The Joy of Painting. Bob's business partner, Walt Kowalski, dropped a bombshell, a message that seemed like a declaration of war. As reported by Alston Ramsey in the Daily Beast, this message was laden with legal jargon and aggressive posturing. It had a single purpose: complete ownership over Bob Ross, his name, his likeness, and everything he had ever touched or created. Tensions within Bob Ross's business started to surface around 1992 after the death of his second wife, Jane, who was also a co-owner of Bob Ross. Jane's passing led to her shares in the company being split between Ross and his remaining partners, the Kowalskis. Already holding a majority, the Kowalskis seemed eager for Ross to relinquish his portion, effectively giving them greater control. According to a report by the Daily Beast, the conflicts reached a peak during Ross's final days. His son Steve recounted that his father was embroiled in an intense, heated argument with the Kowalskis, fighting over the future of his shares and creative rights. Despite his failing health, Bob Ross made some swift and decisive changes to his will, much like the last-minute tweaks he often made to his paintings on his show. In these final legal adjustments, he transferred the rights to his name and likeness from Annette, a previous partner, to his son, Steve. Additionally, he left his estate to his third wife, Linda, whom he married in a bedside ceremony shortly before his death. The Kowalskis challenged Ross's decisions, arguing that everything he had created during his career was technically work for hire, which legally meant he wouldn't have the right to pass on his intellectual property. Unfortunately for Ross's intended beneficiaries, the Kowalskis ultimately prevailed in the lawsuit. Following Bob Ross's death in 1995, The Joy of Painting continued to be broadcast for a few years. But as time passed, Ross and his work gradually began to fade from the public consciousness. He became a nostalgic figure for those who had grown up watching him in the 1980s. However, the digital age eventually sparked a revival of interest in Ross's work. In 2015, Bob Ross Inc. struck a deal with the live streaming service Twitch, which was looking to promote its platform with a marathon of The Joy of Painting. The event catapulted Ross back into the spotlight, reintroducing him as the happy painter to a new generation. Viewers, some of whom were budding artists, and others simply seeking relaxation after a long day, found solace and inspiration in Ross's calm demeanor and the soothing sound of his voice as he painted. Bob Ross, born Robert Norman Ross in Daytona Beach, Florida, on October 29, 1942, came from humble beginnings. His father, Jack, was a carpenter, and his mother, Ollie, was a waitress. Growing up in Orlando, Ross dropped out of high school in the 9th grade to work with his father. During this period, he had an accident with a saw that resulted in the loss of part of his left index finger, though this injury did not hinder his future career as a painter. Bob Ross joined the U.S. Air Force in 1961, embarking on what would become a 2-decade-long military career. Despite his tall stature of 6 feet 2 inches and having flat feet, which precluded him from pilot training or aircraft maintenance roles, Ross found his niche in administrative duties, serving as a medical records technician. Over the years, he climbed the ranks and ultimately reached the position of first sergeant. In this role, he was responsible for enforcing discipline, often being the one to demand strict adherence to regulations, which involved tasks like scrubbing latrines and ensuring beds were properly made. He was so stringent in these duties that he earned the nickname Bust-em-up Bobby, though he personally did not enjoy the harsh disciplinarian role and vowed to adopt a more gentle demeanor once his military service concluded. During his time in the Air Force, Ross was stationed in Alaska, where he became captivated by the breathtaking Alaskan landscapes. It was here that his artistic inclinations began to take shape. He attended a painting class at a USO club, initially just to pass the time, but soon found himself deeply drawn to the creative process. His enthusiasm for painting continued to grow, and he actively sought out further instruction in the art. To supplement his income from the Air Force, Ross took up a part-time job at a local tavern. There, he found a unique opportunity to sell his art by painting landscapes on gold panning tins, which were popular with tourists. This side hustle not only provided additional income, but also taught him to paint quickly. I used to go home at lunch and do a couple while I had my sandwich. I'd take them back that afternoon and sell them. In 1975, while still in the Air Force, Ross came across The Magic of Oil Painting, a television show hosted by German painter William Alexander. Alexander was a proponent of the alla prima, or wet-on-wet painting technique, which allows for the completion of a painting in a remarkably short time by applying fresh layers of paint over still wet underlayers. This method resonated with Ross, inspiring him to adopt and eventually master this technique himself. Ross's skill and speed in painting quickly surpassed the financial rewards of his military career. He was reportedly earning more from his paintings than from his role in the Air Force. Recognizing the potential for a full-time career in art, he decided to retire from military service in 1981, having attained the rank of Master Sergeant. Ross attended various art schools after leaving the Air Force. He studied the wet-on-wet technique under William Alexander by joining his Alexander Magic Art Supplies Company and working as a traveling salesman and painting tutor. Ross taught wet-on-wet to several friends and colleagues, including Annette Kowalski, who Ross met during one of his sessions in Florida. Kowalski had recently lost a son in an accident, and Ross's kind personality and calming demeanor lifted me up out of that depression. I said, "Let's put it in a bottle and sell it." Kowalski convinced Ross to strike out on his own. They pooled their savings and created their own company, with Kowalski working as Ross's manager. Although Ross publicly credited Alexander with teaching him the wet-on-wet technique, Alexander later accused Ross of betraying and copying him, telling the New York Times, "What bothers me is not just that he betrayed me, but that he thinks he can do it better." Also, although Ross's perm is one of his most recognizable characteristics, he did not actually like the hairdo. His hair had usually been straight, but he tried a perm so he could let his hair grow longer and save money on fewer haircuts. When the perm became integrated into the company logo, he was unable to change it, much to his frustration. After some initial struggles with the company, Ross launched the television series The Joy of Painting, which premiered in 1983 on PBS, where it would run for more than a decade and attract millions of viewers. As a TV painting instructor, Ross became known for his light humor and gentle demeanor, as well as his ability to complete a painting in 30 minutes. He became well known for his mannerisms and oft-used quotations, including his love of happy little trees and his uplifting catchphrase, "We don't make mistakes, we just have happy accidents."
I think in one of the earlier shows I mentioned, we don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents.
The Joy of Painting would eventually be carried by more than 275 stations. With help from Kowalski and her husband, Walt, Ross spawned an empire that would include videos, how-to books, art supplies, and certified Bob Ross instructors. Bob Ross Inc. grew into a $15 million business, and Ross made an estimated 30,000 paintings during his lifetime. He prepared 3 versions of almost every painting he made, one created before taping, one painted on screen during the show, and a more detailed version after filming for inclusion in his instructional books. The Joy of Painting was canceled in 1994 so Ross could focus on his health. A longtime cigarette smoker, Ross always expected to die young and had long experienced health problems, including 2 heart attacks and 2 bouts of cancer by his 40s. The second was an aggressive type of lymphoma, which caused Ross's death on July 4, 1995, at the age of 52. He died at his home in Orlando. The majority of his original oil paintings were donated to charities or to PBS stations. Ross himself opposed using his paintings for financial gain, so most were never sold in major auction houses. The few that found their way onto the market sometimes sold for more than $10,000. Today, Ross remains one of the best-known and highest-paid American painters. His show has since found a new generation of fans in the digital age. His lasting success is due in part to the timelessness of his message. In truth, the joy of painting isn't so much about learning how to paint as it is about learning to believe in yourself, to trust in others, and to appreciate the beauty of the natural world. His old television episodes remain popular on YouTube, and his official account on the live streaming service Twitch has millions of followers. Netflix released a documentary in 2021 called Bobross: Happy Accidents, Betrayal and Greed, which explored Ross's life and the legal disputes with the Kowalski family. Owen Wilson portrayed a painter with a similar style, voice, and mannerisms as Ross in the 2023 film Paint, though the story of the movie is not based upon Ross's real life. And so Bob Ross lives on even after his untimely death. That's it for today. Until next time, bye.